There is a web that governs every significant outcome in human life, and most people never see it. They see the surface, the meetings, the handshakes, the credentials, the work. They believe these things determine what they receive from the world. They are wrong. What determines what you receive is not what you do. It is where you stand in a network of obligations, perceptions, and unspoken alliances that the people inside it would never explain to you, because explaining it would compromise the advantage it gives them. Machiavelli understood this network with unusual precision. He watched it operate in the courts of Renaissance Italy, in the space between the prince and his advisors, between the advisor and the gatekeeper, between the gatekeeper and the person who wanted access to something they could not obtain directly. He observed who rose and who fell, and his observation was consistent. The people who rose were not the most talented, the most virtuous, or the most diligent. They were the people who understood the invisible architecture of the room they were in and positioned themselves within it deliberately. Everyone else, regardless of their actual capability, remained in the position where circumstance had placed them. This video is about the laws that govern that invisible architecture, 13 of them, organized not as theory, but as a practical map of how power actually moves between people, and how you can learn to move with it rather than against it. The first law is the one that separates the person who will rise from the person who will stay where they are indefinitely, regardless of how much they deserve better. Never approach power as a supplicant. Approach as a solution. The moment you communicate need, through your words, your posture, your timing, the quality of your eagerness, you have already changed the dynamic in a direction that will be very difficult to reverse. The powerful are surrounded by people who want things from them. Takers wearing the costume of allies. Flatterers whose attention is a form of extraction. The assessment that powerful people perform on every new person they encounter is essentially, does this person add weight to what I am building or remove it? Are they a resource or a drain? The person who arrives communicating need has already answered that question. They are a drain, not because their need is unreasonable, but because the communication of it positions them as someone who will cost rather than contribute. Your task, before you have said anything of substance, is to communicate through every available signal that you are the answer to a problem they have not yet solved, that your presence in their orbit creates something that was not there before you arrived. This reorientation is not primarily behavioral, it is primarily internal. The person who genuinely brings something, who has developed real capability, real knowledge, real perspective that is not commonly available, does not need to perform the absence of need. The absence of need is real, and it radiates differently than performance. The second law governs what you do before you are ready to offer anything. Observe before you move. Machiavelli wrote that a general studies terrain before battle. He does not advance until he understands the lay of the land, where the advantages are, where the vulnerabilities are, where the current is moving and where it is stagnant. The application to any social environment is direct. Every system of power has its own specific structure. Who actually holds authority and who merely holds the appearance of it. What the person at the top actually prizes and what they say they prize. Who shapes their perception before information reaches them and who they filter out. None of this information is available in advance. All of it is available through observation. The mistake most ambitious people make is to act too fast, to speak too much, to reveal their position and their desire before they have gathered enough information to act effectively. They arrive in a new environment and immediately begin performing, displaying their credentials, their ambition, their personality, because they believe that visibility is the path to advancement. They are making the decision about how to play the game before they have finished reading the board. Observe first. Study who gets listened to and why. Note who gets interrupted and by whom. Watch the specific things that land with the person whose attention matters and the things that produce a subtle dimming of interest. This diagnostic work is not passive. It is the most active and most useful work you can do in the early stages of any high-stakes social environment. The third law addresses what you do with the information observation provides. Mirror their world, not yours. Every powerful person operates from a set of values, preferences, and assumptions about how things should work that are specific to them. They are not interested in being exposed to entirely foreign frameworks. They are interested in people who seem to understand their world, who speak its language, who share its implicit values, who operate from assumptions that align with theirs. This is not because powerful people are narrow. It is because trust is built on recognition, and recognition requires some degree of similarity. When you harmonize with someone's existing framework, not by abandoning your own perspective, but by finding the genuine points of alignment and leading with those, you stop being an outsider requesting entry. You begin to feel like someone who already belongs. The door opens not because you forced it, but because it no longer feels like a door to them. The fourth law is the one that most people miss, because they believe that full transparency demonstrates confidence. Never allow yourself to be fully known. When you have revealed everything you can offer, you have been priced. And priced things are compared to other priced things. They are evaluated for whether a better option exists. The person who maintains depth, who allows others to sense that there is more than is currently visible, more capability, more connection, more perspective than has been displayed, creates something that full disclosure cannot: sustained curiosity. Curiosity is the condition under which people keep returning. Completion ends the conversation. Mystery extends it indefinitely. The fifth law concerns the specific quality that the powerful recognize as the signal of genuine sophistication. Appear indifferent to advancement while executing with precision when opportunity arrives. Overt hunger for status is repulsive to the people who have achieved it. It reminds them of their own early desperation, the years of visible striving that they have worked to forget and would prefer not to have reflected back at them. The person who seems ambitious, who makes their desire for advancement legible, who is visibly angling for position, that person is managed, not included. They are given enough to keep them useful, but not enough to give them standing. The person who appears genuinely indifferent to outcome, who is present and engaged without any detectable agenda about where the interaction leads, is the one who gets watched. And when an opportunity presents itself, and that person moves on it with the decisive precision of someone who has been paying attention without showing that they were paying attention, the effect is remarkable. Restraint followed by exact action is the behavioral signature that the powerful recognize as their own kind. The sixth law operates on a principle that most people intuitively understand about objects, but never apply to themselves. Make the powerful compete for your loyalty. Loyalty that is automatic has no value. It costs nothing to acquire, and therefore is worth nothing to hold. The allegiance that is given to everyone who asks is indistinguishable from the absence of allegiance. But the loyalty of someone who has demonstrated that they choose, who has other options, other alliances, other people and institutions who want what they have to give, is a scarce resource. And scarce resources are protected. You do not manufacture this through games. You arrive at it by genuinely developing the kind of capability and character that multiple people and institutions would value. When that development is real, the scarcity is real. And when the scarcity is real, the person you choose to align with understands that they have received something worth keeping. The seventh law involves a form of influence that most people use clumsily and few use well. Precision and recognition is more powerful than generosity and praise. The powerful hear generic praise continuously. It has no more effect on them than background noise. What registers, what actually changes how they perceive you, is recognition that demonstrates understanding. Not "you are brilliant," but your timing on that decision showed a quality of judgment I have not seen anyone else in this situation display. The difference is not the warmth of the compliment. It is the specificity. Specific recognition reveals that you have been paying attention, that you understand what they value in themselves, that your assessment is not automatic, but earned. That kind of recognition carries weight that flattery never approaches. The eighth law is the most dangerous one to violate, because the violation is almost never conscious, and the consequences are rarely announced. Never allow your capability to appear to threaten theirs. Machiavelli was explicit about this. The prince eliminates not those who are dangerous, but those who make him feel vulnerable. The distinction matters. The target is not actual threat, but perceived diminishment. The person who makes a powerful individual feel smaller in any interaction, through superior display of knowledge, through correction, through the visible enjoyment of being right in a way that makes the other person wrong, has created an enemy that will not announce itself. The elimination will come through 1,000 small exclusions, through slowly diminishing access, through a reputation shaped in conversations the person will never be present for. The art is to allow your capability to serve their advancement, rather than compete with it. Let your intelligence be the instrument through which they look smarter. Let your insight be the foundation for decisions that are attributed to them. The brilliant social strategist is almost never the person who appears brilliant. They are the person who makes the powerful people around them appear brilliant and receives the protection and inclusion that generates in return. The ninth law redirects attention to where the actual architecture of access is constructed. Build alliances horizontally, not only vertically. The obsession with impressing the person at the top of any hierarchy is understandable and almost entirely misguided, because access to the person at the top is mediated entirely by the people around them, the assistants, advisors, gatekeepers, and trusted confidants who shape what the principal hears and how they hear it. These people are not obstacles to the real relationship. They are the relationship. The impression you make on them determines everything that flows upward about you. Machiavelli would have called these people the invisible princes, the actual holders of operational influence behind the visible position of authority. Treat them accordingly, not with condescension, not with the transactional brevity of someone who views them as a means to an end, but with the genuine engagement of someone who understands that their goodwill is worth more than almost anything the person above them could directly provide. The 10th law transforms what most people treat as social ceremony into something strategic. Return value, not just gratitude. When someone powerful does something useful for you, the response that costs you the least and produces the least long-term return is the immediate and effusive expression of thanks. It completes the transaction. It marks it as finished. The response that actually builds a relationship converts the exchange into a continuing pattern. You return value, not immediately, but at the moment when it matters most, when their need is greatest and your capacity to address it is most useful. The timing is the message. It says that you were not repaying a debt. You were demonstrating that the relationship has ongoing mutual utility. That is the difference between a transaction and an alliance. The 11th law requires a precision of execution that makes it the most mishandled of the 13. Resist occasionally, on your terms, in their interest. Total compliance generates contempt, not trust. The person who agrees with everything, who accommodates every request, who never introduces friction into the relationship, has communicated that their position is fundamentally subordinate. And fundamentally subordinate people are not consulted, they are directed. The strategic disagreement, delivered calmly, positioned as protection for the powerful person's interests rather than opposition to their authority, withdrawn gracefully if not received, communicates something that consistent compliance never can. It communicates that the relationship is between people of genuine standing, that your engagement is substantive rather than performative, and that your agreement, when it comes, is real rather than automatic. The powerful respect those who can say no with precision, because only people with actual standing can afford to say no. Your occasional, calibrated refusal is evidence that you are such a person. The 12th law governs the management of your presence over time. Control your visibility with the same intentionality you bring to every other aspect of the relationship. The person who is always available is never exceptional. The person who appears consistently but at intervals, who is present enough to be known, but not so present that presence becomes unremarkable, creates a rhythm of anticipation that sustained availability eliminates. Each appearance, when visibility is managed this way, carries the weight of something selected rather than something default. When you return after a period of strategic absence, the return is an event, and events are remembered in a way that continuous presence never is. The 13th law is the one that governs everything else. Move as though you already belong. Confidence requires no external source. The person who waits for acceptance before acting as though they belong will wait indefinitely, because the signals of belonging that others respond to are the signals produced by someone who already believes they belong. Uncertainty reads as subordinate status. Comfort reads as appropriate placement. When you enter a room of power as someone who is genuinely, internally comfortable in that room, not performing comfort but actually feeling it, having done the work on yourself that makes genuine comfort possible, you have changed the social calculation of everyone present before you have said anything at all. Machiavelli understood that fortune does not favor the careful and the qualified who wait for invitation. It favors the people who move into position as though the position was already theirs, and then demonstrate, through their comportment and their work, that the move was accurate. These 13 laws are not techniques to be layered onto a self that remains unchanged underneath. They are the behavioral expression of a specific internal development. The person who can genuinely apply all 13 is not someone who has learned a playbook. They are someone who has done the sustained work of becoming, of developing real capability, real perspective, real emotional control, until the behaviors that follow from that development become natural rather than performed. The natural is the only version that survives. The performed version works briefly, in shallow waters, with people who are not particularly observant. The powerful are observant. They have been in rooms long enough to distinguish the substance from the surface. And when they encounter the real version, when they encounter someone whose confidence is not covering anxiety, but is the genuine expression of someone who has built something worth being confident about, they recognize it with the immediate certainty of one practitioner recognizing another. That recognition is worth working toward, not because it grants access to a world worth envying, but because the person you must become to earn it is the most complete version of the person you are capable of being. The climb is real. The transformation it requires is the point.